I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 127. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Tardello, coming to you on Sunday, September 17th. And wow. Just wow. 77 points. Texas State downs Jackson State 77-34. I'm flabbergasted. GJ Kinney said light up the scoreboard. And boy, we didn't know what to expect. We hadn't seen that here at Texas State. That was a long game. We're not used to games that long due to all those touchdowns. That was incredible. Second most in program history. The most ever, 79-0 over Meridian College in 1920. Shout out to Chris Coots, Media Relations Department, for pulling that one up. Actually, I think it was Phil Pongratz, also in the Media Relations Department. Now I think about it. Incredible. First 2-1 start since 2013 for the Bobcats. What a win. And we're going to unpack it. It's a lot to talk about. Talk about what I liked, what I didn't like. There's more stuff I liked. I assure you there. But before we get to the Bobcats, this episode is brought to you by TGC LLC, the GalindoCollective.com. That's G-A-L-I-N-D-O, GalindoCollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people planning and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms at TGC_LLC and on Instagram and Facebook at the Galindo Collective. Shout out to Rick Galindo over there at TGC, a true Texas State sicko, a Texas State grad himself. I ran into him at the game yesterday. It wasn't even coordinated. I was wandering around searching for recruits, and there was a lot of recruits. And I came across Rick Galindo and his wife. It's awesome to shake their hands and get to talk to him a little bit. Took a nice selfie. Looking forward to seeing that one, Rick. But it was awesome to run into Rick Galindo. He's throwing his support behind us for the whole season, so throw your support behind him at thegalindocollective.com. That's G-A-L-I-N-D-O, GalindoCollective.com. Thanks to Rick Galindo. We're also sponsored by Balcones Roofing and Remodeling, the most experienced F-Wave roofing contractor in Central Texas. F-Wave is a highly impact-resistant lifetime shingle with stunning designer curb appeal. It is the only roofing product on the market with an exclusive hail warranty. I was a little concerned we were going to get some hail this weekend. Some storms were coming in, and we all know in Texas, you got to have some hail protection. They got that for you at Balcones Roofing and Remodeling with that F-Wave shingle. So hit them up. New Sicko, new Bobcat. Carl Larson over there at Balcones Roofing and Remodeling, a converted South Carolina Gamecock. Although I saw some Gamecock tweets from him on his Twitter account at Balcones Roofing. So it's okay. He can double dip. I'm sure he saw 77 points and was pretty confident in his investment in this podcast that covers Texas State. But go hit up Balcones Roofing. They are at balconesroofsaustin.com. That's BALCONES roofsaustin.com, and you can contact them on the phone 512-937-8805. That's 512-937-8805. And we introduced this next sponsor last time. It's our guy Thaddeus Watkins at the San Marcos Edward Jones Financial Advisory. He is a financial advisor over there. That's what I should say. I just read that wrong. Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized to you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? When you work with Thaddeus Watkins, your San Marcos Edward Jones financial advisor, he focuses on what's important to you. You'll work together and use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. Contact Thaddeus Watkins at 737-373-8200. That's 737 373-8200 and at edwinjones.com/Thaddeus-Watkins and on Twitter at Big Thad, BIGGTHADD with a little underscore at the very end. Shout out to Thad doing some recruiting at the game. He was out there talking with Ori Williams, big prospect out of San Marcos High School. He's committed to LSU. He was out there with his teammate Brendan Jones, another big offensive lineman out of San Marcos. He was taking pictures with recruits and trying to get them in, and that's awesome, man. You know, if you don't know Thaddeus, he's a former player. He used to play for the Bobcats in the Franchione era. He stuck around San Marcos, working a business here at Edward Jones. Not a lot of people do that, and especially not a lot of former players stick around town. So it's really cool to have Thad partnering up with us. They also just won Best Interior in the Spirit contest that Texas State was doing at that Back the Bobcats block party. Last week he got the award. It was cool to see him get that. I got to go check out that interior, saw him with his old jersey out there. He also had a recruit station for Beth Damphus and some of the other judges where they would put on Texas State gloves, you know, when you put the hands together with the Bobcat in the middle, some sunglasses, chains, just like you do with the recruit. So pretty cool deal he was doing. A very passionate Bobcat, very passionate alum, a true sicko. Really glad he's on board. So go check him out. Specifically on Twitter at Big Thad _. My guy's out there always talking about the Bobcats. All right, lots of ad reads. And shout out to Austin Patchmaster, one of our first sponsors. They're jumping back in. We'll get to them more on the next episode, but austin.patchmaster.com. If you remember me pushing them, really glad to have them back on board. Banner year for the podcast and the team, at least so far, 3 games into the season. I shouldn't say banner year when it's only 25% done. Ooh, don't you hate that number? I hate that number every year, when 3 games are down. It's 25% of the season. It goes so quick. But what a game. Incredible atmosphere. It was a far cry from last week after everyone was pretty down in the dumps after the UTSA loss. It's been quite a roller coaster. They come out, they beat a P5 on the road against Baylor, as high as they could be there. They had AP top 25 votes, and G.J. Kinney was on Jim Rome, and there's a whole lot of talk about the Bobcats. And then, the balloon got deflated a little bit against UTSA after that loss, but not too much because 24,000 and change fans showed up to that game. Shout out to Jackson State. A lot of their fans were there. They deserve a lot of credit. Really cool people, all of them that I got to talk to, even the people that covered the team. That was it. So it wasn't completely deflated. And it got reinflated. Boy, it did it with 77 points. We knew G.J. Kinney was capable of this. G.J. Kinney and Mac Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, we saw them do this at Incarnate Word last year. It was at the FCS level at Incarnate Word, so I wasn't sure if it will translate to the FBS level. Looked good against Baylor. Had a bit of a step back against UTSA, and then it was back in full force on Saturday. Granted, it was an FCS opponent, but that's still 77 points, and they played the backups the whole second half. That was some great stuff. There were some bad stuff, no doubt, and we'll talk about some of that. But let's get to the stuff that I liked. There's a lot. It's a long list, so let's jump into it. Right off the bat, I love the 2-1 start. First one since 2013. That's fantastic. There were a lot of firsts last night. And that one was, it's not a first for the FBS era, but it's the first one in 10 years. It's been a long time here, and it feels good to have a winning record in non-conference this early on. I love the block party. We'll go back to Friday before the game. I talked about the block party on the last episode. I did go to it. It was fantastic. It was about 1,000 or so people, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I wasn't counting, but there were a lot of booths from local businesses with you could buy shirts, and you could buy all kinds of Texas State gear. You could buy alcohol and food. There were games. There was live music on the stage. Zelix opened up, so you could go in there into Zelix as well. North Street was all blocked off. It was quite the scene. A lot of alumni, like former players. They even brought out some recruits. I tweeted about Derek Osman, Broken Arrow tight end. He was visiting. He's committed to Tulsa. They got him not just on a visit, but to the block party and everything. So they were using that as a recruiting event as well. And then Don Coryell got up and spoke. Kelly Dampus, the president, got up and spoke. G.J. Kinney got up and spoke. Lincoln Perry and Connor Fox spoke as well, 2 injured players. It was a fantastic event. It was like a small town college pep rally. And I thought that was very cool. It was one of the cooler events I've seen this department put on that's not, I guess it's game adjacent because it's back to Bobcats going into the game. But this Town and Gown initiative, it got a lot of people involved. We saw Gumby's Pizza, free plug for Gumby's Pizza, for renaming themselves K-Damp Pizza. That was really cool. Definitely ordering one of those shirts. All the proceeds go to the athletes. So that's very cool. An incredible initiative all around by the city of San Marcos and the school. And then to follow it up with that game, that performance, it's fantastic. It's only scheduled once a year, but man, that could be something that happens more often. It might be too late to get that in the works now because I'm sure that takes months of planning. But I can imagine that'll be back next year, and I'm looking forward to that. And then when I got to the game, first thing I noticed was the traffic. I started driving. The game started at 7:30. I left my house at 5, and it took me a while to get to the game. It took me a while to park. I don't think I parked till 5:30, and I don't live that far. So right then I was like, okay, well, that's a little different. It's usually not that difficult to get to the game. And it was. I'm glad I left early, but it was the 9th largest crowd ever at Bobcat Stadium. Again, Jackson State fans deserve a lot of credit for that. They definitely travel, and they were there. Didn't go their way, but they were still very, very gracious guests. And it was a lively crowd. And the student section was the part that really impressed me. I mean, we talked about it when they were bringing in all the freshmen, and they had 8,000 of them. At that event near the LBJ Student Center, and then at the stadium, and all these things that they've done. And it was, if you want to get them to show up to the game, you got to win. If they had won both those games, crowd would have been even better. But even just beating Baylor invigorated them enough to see some students in there, and they were rewarded for their efforts for going to the game with 77 points. 77. I still can't get over that. I mean, that's 2 away from the record, though. So close. I love the light show atmosphere, the fireworks. They definitely amped up the firework game at Bobcat Stadium. The lights are fantastic. The light shows they do after every score. That was really cool in person. Probably not as cool in the press box. All the lights are on and everything where we're at. But I rewatched the broadcast this morning, and that it looked really cool there. And I like that. I like that effect. It's good to see them, taking little by little steps to improve that game day experience. It looked to me on my end, the game day experience looked a lot better. I heard from y'all, so the beer lines were still a little long, but better improvement. It's a little bit of improvement in a lot of areas. I know some people had trouble scanning their tickets and getting in. There were long lines. I know a train stopped on the tracks, kind of messed that up apparently. But overall, it seemed like the game day experience was increased. I'm on the media side. I'm in the press box, so I don't see it like y'all. So sound off. Let me know what you think about that. I always like to hear y'all's opinions on the broadcast and stuff, which we'll get to that part. I loved K-Damp coming out on a motorcycle again. It does make me nervous every time I see the fearless leader of this university riding on a motorcycle, knowing how dangerous they are. He seems like he's got it. He's got a handle of it. I'm sure they'll have some more celebrities or, Texas State celebrities, I guess I should say, coming out and doing it. My favorite was Karen Chisholm. It was awesome. She really rocked that leather jacket. I like Danfus having the leather jacket on and then straight into a suit. That guy, cool dude. Love it. Shout out to K-Damp. Let's get to the game, though. That's enough. That's enough build up for stuff around the game. There was way more stuff I loved in the game. That game was great. The first thing that pops out to me is the line dominance on both sides. Defensive line dominated, offensive line dominated. When I saw these teams warming up and they lined up at the beginning of the game, there was a very noticeable size difference. And that's something you don't see for Texas State, even when they do play an FCS opponent. And this wasn't some slouch FCS opponent. I know they lost a lot of players when Dion left, but they're still back-to-back SWAC champions. That was a pretty good quarterback they had out there. And Jason Brown, really good running back. And Irv Mulligan, I talked about him a little bit on the pod leading up to it. He had 2 touchdowns, strong runner himself. But even with that, the Bobcats controlled the line of scrimmage that entire game. You look at that, the defensive line had 5 sacks again, 6 sacks maybe, actually. I think they had 6. I know 13 and a half TFLs. That's all 3 games. They're in double-digit TFLs. They are a feisty bunch. They get after it. And there's a lot of really good players on that defensive line as they rotate them out a lot. We've seen some guys get injured, saw some guys held out, like Sam Latham didn't get in there, but they started with Chance Main and Ben Bell and made up ground for no Sam Latham, no Jordan Revels either. That was kind of a game time decision. You know, GJ Kinney talked about in the press conference leading up to the game that there were a lot of game time decisions. Seems like Jordan Revels was in there as well, and they decided not to roll him out there. Probably a good bet. Going to need him for the rest of the season. But the rest of the D-line made up for it. We even saw Devin Wright getting in there. I know a lot of you asked about Devin Wright, the Boise State product, because he was running with the first unit in the spring. Then they brought in a bunch of other defensive ends, so the first 2 games he wasn't getting in the mix. When the game was out of hand, he got back there. I'm pretty sure he had 2 sacks. I'll look that up here in a sec because I'm going to pull up the stats and talk about some of that stuff as well. But yeah, Devin Wright getting in there. Victor Obi had a TFL. I remember seeing that. I was like, all right, Victor Obi. Everybody got reps. Everybody got reps. And that's the best part about a blowout this early in the season with all these new players. Everybody's going to get reps and you get to see everybody. It's like, oh, here's so-and-so. We saw Demarius Good, 5th string running back out there getting reps. Really good reps. Towards the end of the 4th quarter, they almost got over 80 points because of Demarius Good and PJ Hatter. We'll get there. 4 quarterbacks. Yeah, that's another thing I liked, but I'll get there. 200 recruits. I love that 200 recruits got to see 77 points. A lot of recruits. I posted on Patreon some of the recruits for 2024. I'll go over here and talk about it. I mentioned at the block party already that I ran into Derek Osmond, Tulsa commit. I also ran into Brad Jackson, Reagan quarterback. He committed, first commit for this class. Even got to talk to him a little bit at the game as well. Pretty cool. He was pretty excited after that game after seeing 77 points, no doubt about it. Some other commits that were scheduled to go, I didn't exactly see them. Westfield corner Carson Williams, Clear Falls linebacker Lakel McCowan, Clear Springs linebacker Michael Silvali, Crowley defensive lineman Priest Ash, Waxahachie defensive lineman Jeremy Jackson, Kimball wide receiver Jordan Martin, and wide receiver Kylan Evans. I did run into Kylan Evans as well, and his father. It's really good to talk with both of them. They seem very excited about the Bobcats and everything that's going on. Both said they'll be back next week. An official visit for him. But those were they had 12 commits, and they were 8 of them to come in town. And that's always important to curate those relationships and keep them committed. Because if they're visiting your game, they're not visiting somebody else's game. So it's important to have the commits at as many games as you possibly can. So it was nice to see 8 of them there. They're taking that seriously. I mentioned Derek Osmond, Broken Arrow tight end. He's committed to Tulsa. There are other guys who are committed to other schools that visited 2024 prospects. And now I mentioned 200 recruits that they had. I'm just narrowing this down to the 2024 because there were 2025 and 2026. And I don't have the whole list. I really don't. I was able to take some video and footage and see who I could see and read some lanyards and do what I could. It was a lot. And I knew a lot were coming out. I made sure to get there nice and early. It was good. I ran into some people doing that. Shout out to Miguel. Ran into Miguel. Shout out to Logan. Met Logan and his wife. My guy repped the state of Texas. I met him at the Incarnate Word. Alan over there. I'm hoping that I'm not doxing you with the first name. Didn't say the last one. It's awesome to meet some sickos, man. Hope you're tuning in right now, and I hope I see you at the next one. But yeah, let's go through it. Some commits from other schools that we're visiting. Ori Williams is the top one, at least on my list for my personal interest, because he's from San Marcos. He's an offensive lineman here. He's 6'8", 300 and some odd pounds. Massive, massive person. I was talking about Thad Watkins earlier, posting a picture, and Thad's a big guy, and they dwarfed him. Maybe not dwarf. That's harsh to say. Sorry, Thad. You're not a dwarf. They made him look pretty small standing next to him. It's a big guy. I can imagine if I was in the middle, I'd look like a little shrimp. But Ori Williams, he's committed to LSU. So it's going to be hard to pull him away from the LSU Tigers, but I imagine getting him to stay in his hometown. His teammate Brendan Jones was there, another San Marcos offensive lineman. If you can get them maybe both offered, have them playing together, that could bode well. I know there was a former San Marcos offensive lineman. I should have noted his name. He's playing college ball. He said that would be important for Williams and Jones. He tweeted that publicly. Another LSU commit that was in town is Duncanville running back Caden Durham. That would be another huge flip for the Bobcats. BYU commit as well for Byron Nelson corner Jonathan Cabella. We've heard of Red Oak linebacker Zach Smith before, SMU commit. He went to the Horses and Ferraris deal. They were able to get him back again. It's 2 visits for an SMU commit. Tice Williams out of Conroe. He's a safety out of Conroe, Boise State commit. He also was at Horses and Ferraris. See, they're still trying to bring those guys in. There was another UTSA commit at that Horses and Ferraris, but he was not at this game, at least not scheduled. I know I had an Arizona State, Jonathan, I believe it's Jonathan Beza. I know I have his picture. I was just looking at some stuff on him. He's an Arizona State commit. I do know that much. Yes, here we go. Elijah Beza out of South Oak Cliff. We can remember the Bobcats have tried to get in there at South Oak Cliff before. We know Randy Martinez, director of recruiting. He has a bit of a connection to DFW, obviously, with like Caden Durham coming in from Duncanville. That plays a lot into it. But yeah, Elijah Beza, he's committed to Arizona State. For some other guys who aren't committed yet, Conley running back Kiefer Sibley, Brock offensive lineman Brock Riker. Brock plays for Brock. Interesting stuff there. San Antonio Cornerstone corner Carter McRae. He's a corner at Cornerstone. We just got a lot of wordplay here, but we know Carter McRae. He was at Horses and Ferraris back in July. McKinney cornered DeAndre Shepard. MacArthur defensive lineman Tavian Atkinson. Lake Travis linebacker Marcus Boswell. Pretty good player. I know of Boswell because he's a local guy. Converse Judson linebacker Michael Woods. Westfield running back Taji Atkins. I know that's somebody they've been going after. That was PJ Hatter's former teammate at a Westfield. And Midland Legacy tight end Jordan Williams. That's just a handful. And those guys, they all have big-time offers. They have other FBS offers, and they're highly coveted recruits. And there were others, other 2025, 2026, that have plenty of other offers as well. So it was good for all those recruits to see 77 points. That is the lifeline of the program, of any program. I mean, especially with NIL, especially with the transfer portal stuff, it's more and more like free agency. That's why I love covering it. Some reporters don't, at least not as much as if you were covering a pro team and there was free agency. You'd be all over it. You'd have to cover that. So, and I get it because recruiting is such a big animal and the rules change all the time. And there's a lot going on, and there are these signing periods, but it is 365 days. It's going on all year. I can remember the Bobcats had a commit on Christmas one year. I was like, hold on to my family while I sit there and tweet about it. It's just how it goes, but it's part of it, and it's good to see this coaching staff and this administration opening up a recruiting budget to make sure people can get out there. So I love that. I love seeing 4 quarterbacks play. How about that? 4 quarterbacks. TJ Finley started the game, did incredible. Let's start diving into stats. I've done enough talking about stuff around the game, but TJ Finley, 17 for 21, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, still no interceptions. 2.5 games, no interceptions. I say 2.5 because he didn't play the second half, but it's 3. It's 3 games, no interceptions. He got to play the first half. Malik Hornsby got in there for 1 play, 6-yard gain right before halftime. And then he got in there in the second half. I glossed over the rushing stats as well for TJ Finley, though. 4 rushes, 20 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm still mad in fall camp when I kept talking about how much I like TJ Finley, what I like seeing about him in practice. And I had somebody try to tell me he's slow and he's going to force throws, and that'll lead to interceptions. He's disproven that analysis so much the last 3 games. Maybe not as much at UTSA. The first game and this last game, he has dispelled that, at least in my mind. He's not the fastest guy. He seemed like Hornsby, and you're like, okay, that's a real speedy quarterback. But at 6'7", 250, I mean, he's not gonna be as fast as some of these other dual threats. But terrific game from TJ Finley. Got pulled for the second half. Malik Hornsby came in, ran the ball a whole lot, and when GJ Kinney talked about that, a lot of the running in the second half was trying not to run up the score on Jackson State. Said he had a lot of respect for Jackson State, so they ran the ball a lot in the second half. But passing Malik Hornsby 2 for 4, 34 yards, 1 interception. He did have that early turnover. My too soon analysis of his game, because it's everyone else is on game 3, but really it's his first set of snaps. So I think he still has a lot to get used to out there. He gets the ball, he looks at one receiver, and then he looks to take off. If he can't take off, then he's going to try and whip it and throw it really fast at the last minute. His 2 incompletions were 2 examples of that. So it needs to clean that part of it up. But the running aspect of it is dazzling, enticing, fantastic. I loved it. 10 attempts, 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13.3 yards per carry at quarterback. That's always exciting. He had the second most attempts. Demarius Good. Wow, Demarius Good got over 100 yards. I just now noticed that. 105 yards for Demarius Good. 11 carries, 105. I bet he played his way into some rotation there. Ishmael Mahdi, 3 carries for 77. Davenport, 8 carries for 40. Jeter, 4 for 25. Finley, 4 for 20. For a total of 399 yards. Would have been over 400 if it wasn't for the victory formation for the next quarterback, C.J. Rogers. So C.J. Rogers gets in there towards the end of the fourth quarter. They played Hornsby quite a bit in the second half. And Kinney mentioned that as well. Why not play Rogers a little sooner? They really wanted to give Hornsby a chance. They felt he earned that he was very close to being the starter. So give him that time. It's an open game. Might as well let him go out there and do his thing. So unfortunately, C.J. Rogers, he didn't even get to attempt to pass, but he did get his first snaps as a Bobcat. And one of those snaps looks like it brought them down below 400 yards for the victory formation. So that's unfortunate. But in that last series, it was C.J. Rogers first, and the next play was P.J. Hatter, then C.J. Rogers, then P.J. Hatter, and then C.J. Rogers knelt it down. But on that fourth play with P.J. Hatter, the second play of P.J. Hatter, he took off, and it would have been a nice touchdown, called back. The Wizard, Zach Webb, there's no bigger P.J. Hatter fan than the Wizard. Before we saw anything in fall camp, when we're just talking about things in the spring, watching film, he's like, P.J. Hatter, I love his film. He's the guy. Back then, he was like, he's going to be the starter. And I was like, he's not going to beat out 2 SEC guys. It's just not going to happen. But saw that talent last night, that speed. It's there. And G.J. Kinney said it leading in, going into fall camp, that there are some times where some areas on the field, Hatter's faster than Hornsby. So they have that talent down the pipeline. That's the 4th string quarterback. That should tell you a lot about that QB room. Pretty impressive stuff from P.J. Hatter. Maybe they'll have another blowout and he'll be able to get back out there. But 11 touchdowns total on the night. 8 of them were rushing. It's at least the most in the FBS era. We don't know a lot about that 79-0 win for the Bobcats in 1920. I didn't even know about it until before last night. I've never seen the Bobcats get close enough for people to look around and be like, "Hey, what's the points record here?" And when was the last time they scored this many points? 2005 75-0 win over Panhandle State. Didn't know that one either. That was a little bit before my time here at Texas State. I'm sure there's a lot of y'all that remember that 2005 season. The one thing I know about it, Barrick nearly balled out. Bobcats almost beat A&M, and then the kneel down in the playoffs. went to overtime. That's most of what I know about that season. So I like talking to people that were around then that remember 2005. Like my guy RJ Marquez does KSAT News down in San Antonio. When he came out after the Baylor game for the press conference and was talking about how much it felt like 2005 and how he remembered that. So that was the one of the other bigger wins was 2005. There's more on that one. But yeah, so that seems like that 8 rushing touchdowns, that seems to be the FBS record, at least. Pretty incredible. The rushing touchdowns, 2 by Finley, 2 by Malik. So both the quarterbacks got a pair of touchdowns. 2 by Jamil Jeter, 1 by Mahdi, Ishmael Mahdi, another big burst touchdown for him. That's a speedster. I mean, every time he takes the kickoff, even if he's in the end zone, he's coming out. He's running that ball out. And then 1 by Davenport, Denaro Davenport. Some non-stat impact guys that I saw. You know, I guess I didn't even write anything about receivers, but we're going to pull up some receiver stats and talk about receivers. Because Cole Wilson needs to be talked about. He even returned some kicks as well with Mahdi. They were like, wow, that number 21 is fast. Maybe we should kick it towards number 2. That was a mistake. He kept running it out as well. I did hear leading into that game that special teams has been pretty bad for Jackson State. So there is some of that. But Cole Wilson, 192 all-purpose yards. Receiving, it wasn't a ton receiving. It was a lot on that kickoff return, 4 for 50 and a touchdown. Still a really solid day, no doubt. Joey Hobart, 4 catches, 43 yards. Nice little punt return for him as well. Drew Donnelly, 3 catches, 83 yards and a touchdown. Really terrific first half. I think if they didn't have to scale back the starters so much, he would have really popped out for over 100. I like what Drew Donnelly brings to it. And they talked about it at the beginning of fall camp, where in the spring they had him on the left side at wide receiver, and they moved him to the right. It's done a lot of wonders. Ishmael Mahdi does it everywhere. 1 catch, 27 yards. Forgot about that one. So much happened. Langston Anderson, I didn't forget about this one. 1 catch for 21 yards. Good for Langston Anderson. I believe that was Malik Hornsby's first pass as well. Chris Don Jr., true freshman out of Horn High School, 1 catch, 13 yards. Davenport, 1 for 8 yards. And Sean Shaw, 1 catch for 2 yards. I'm glad I read Sean Shaw's name. Kenny threw just a little nugget in the press conference. Was like, well, Sean Shaw playing some tight end tonight. He's been doing really well there. Guess they moved Sean Shaw to tight end. He's a wide receiver out of Iowa State, 6'6", big tall target, so I could see you could transition him to tight end. But I imagine with the injury to Connor Fox, he was wearing a boot. I mentioned he talked at the block party on Friday night. I saw him talking up Derek Osmond, the Broken Arrow tight end. It seems that injury might be longer than they're letting on. They said game time decision this week, but a boot the night before the game, a boot on the day of the game. I imagine he's got a couple more weeks, so they're trying to supplement there. Because I know that he's mentioned 2 injuries. Kenny has. He's mentioned 2 injuries. I think Simon Gonzalez might be injured because we haven't seen him yet. Titus Lyons got out there, did some great blocking. So it seems like they're figuring out that tight end position. I'm waiting to see some Jake Simpson as well, freshman out of Independence. So we'll see there. But it might be a lot of Sean Shaw at that position. But yeah, it was on the ground for this team running. That's why I didn't even write down any receivers. I mean, it was 9.7 yards per carry on 41 carries. That's unreal. It was handled on the ground after having like 1.1 against UTSA. To do that was really, they really asserted their will, and you need to do that if you're an FBS program and you really want to show the difference between what's FBS and what's FCS. It's the caliber of athlete. It's not just how many scholarships you can have. It's the caliber of athlete you can attract to these programs, and that you can bring in with NIL deals and bigger recruiting budgets and everything. And it's paying dividends. The quarter-by-quarter dominance was great. I know I was looking at that stat here just a little bit ago. They had at least 100 yards in each quarter, which was pretty incredible. Here we go. Quarter by quarter breakdown. First quarter, They had 198 yards. Second quarter, 205 yards. Third quarter, 149. Fourth quarter, 132 for a grand total of 684 yards. They were so close to 696. That's the record for Texas State. 696. If that PJ Hatter touchdown had counted, it would have surpassed that 79 points record, and it would have passed that they would have been in 700s with the yards. So close there. But the quarter by quarter dominance, it was each quarter they did really well. It got shaky in the second quarter. I'll get to the parts where I'll talk about this more on the part I don't like. It got shaky a little bit in the second quarter, but they corrected themselves and actually exploded for a huge halftime lead. I say the second quarter was more like towards the end of the first, into the second, and then by the second half of the second quarter, they were able to reestablish themselves. TJ Finley still quarterback one. I don't mean to deflate anybody's opinions on that, but he's still quarterback one. I mean, the guy accounted for 5 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, he got to pass more than Hornsby. We didn't get to see Hornsby do a whole lot, but in 4 passes, Hornsby threw a pick. That running's incredible, though. Haven't seen a quarterback go over 100 yards since Willie Jones. Shout out to Willie Jones in 2018. It's been a while, and he was able to do that in basically one quarter. He got over 100 yards. And so I see the potential with Malik Hornsby, but then I watch TJ Finley. I see that arm. I see the poise. I see the leadership. I hear him after the game in the press conference, and that's QB1. That's the quarterback. That's the guy. And that performance, even though we saw what we saw from Hornsby, that performance from Finley was better. Both were great. Finley was better. That's the amazing part about this team. I feel like they could win games with either quarterback. But if I'm being completely honest, I see them above 500 with TJ Finley. I see them about a 500 team with Malik Hornsby, which is still an improvement over what it was. Malik Hornsby would have won more than 4 games last year if he was the quarterback last year on this Texas State team. He is talented. He is a terrific talent. But so is TJ Finley. And I think what TJ Finley brings to this team is just a little bit better. But both is fun. We saw both is a great time to watch. Now what I didn't like about the game, I didn't like, this. I'm gonna have to get harsh and get real negative and really come after this team for what I didn't like. I didn't like that they didn't score 80 points. So close. Could have had the record. GJ being a nice guy, didn't want to run up the score. Really wanted to see 80 points. So I didn't like that. Maybe next time. Something to they left a little room for improvement, I guess. Maybe they can get over 80 next time. Obviously I'm joking with that one. I'm not joking about this one. I didn't like the Myron Warren injury. That was if you missed it, if he went down, wasn't moving for a while, started moving. They put him on the cart. It was breathing, gave a thumbs up. So that was nice to see. I don't have a full update. I don't have much of anything except that I know it's not super serious. I do know that. I don't know his status. I don't know what's going on. We had a situation like this last year with Chris Mills, really, really hard hit. I actually didn't see what happened to Myron Warren. We did see what happened to Chris Mills, a really hard hit. And he went to the hospital, but he was released from the hospital and was even back with the team that Sunday after being injured on Saturday and played a couple weeks later. Hoping for a similar situation for Myron Warren. That is the ugly part of this game, or the injuries, specifically the catastrophic ones, the ones that render guys motionless, are always scary. These are young guys. They have lives outside of the field. Never fun to see that. And you heard it from GJ Kinney. It was like, this is one of the first things he brought up. He brought up the crowd, how much he loved the crowd, how great that was. And then he brought up how concerned he was for Myron Warren. And I even tried to have fun with him in the press conference. After we threw him a bunch of questions about the game, I was like, hey, did you think about wearing that cowboy hat you wore during the catwalk? Think about wearing that at the press conference? And he said he didn't want to make it about him. Just thinking about Myron Warren. It was hard to make it a a little bit of a show when one of your guys could be severely injured. So hoping the best for Myron Warren. He's a really good player for this team, Texas transfer. But just hoping the best for his health. Something on the field, obviously the Myron Warren injury, you're not blaming anybody for it. It's one of those uncontrollable aspects of the game. But this one isn't. The next thing I didn't like, and it was penalties. I didn't look up how many penalties they had exactly. I can do that really fast. But it was specifically in the second quarter. It was not great. 10 penalties for 100 yards. Yeah, I knew that was bad. They did really well. The first game specifically did great in the penalty department. Second game, UTSA, they had I think it was 6-1 compared to UTSA. Who knows if that was more about the refs or what have you. You can't blame the loss on the refs, but there were some dicey calls there. This one, 10 penalties for 100 yards. Some of them really, really important penalties. There was an offsides that led to a free play. Was intercepted by Caleb Ford DeMint, but I think he was, now I'm thinking about it, he was actually called for defensive pass interference also. So 2 penalties on that play, negated an interception. There was another offsides free play that extended a drive, a roughing the passer that extended the drive. And these were, a lot of them were defensive penalties. We saw last week some offsides, but this week it was more more on the defensive side with these penalties. And now I will say, with this freewheeling D-line, we heard Tavian Coleman talk about how nice it is to kind of have the freedom to just get back and go after the quarterback with this defensive line. That's how this defensive line operates, is get to the quarterback before they can do anything. And with that, there's going to be enhanced aggression. You're going to jump off sides. You're going to be antsy. You're trying to get to the quarterback, and you're going to jump off sides. You get to the quarterback. Maybe you hit him too hard. You hit him after he throws the ball. So there's going to be give and take with this style of defense, this get after the quarterback defense. There's going to be penalties like this. You want the sacks and the TFLs, specifically the sacks, of course the TFLs, but you want to have more sacks than bad penalties. I assume in a defense like this, that seems like where you thrive. It's that middle ground, because I don't know if you can completely avoid it. If you're going to be aggressive, you're not going to be conservative with this defensive line, and you're going to let them almost freestyle on the defensive line, getting back to the quarterback, then this is going to happen. So I'm not completely concerned about it, but it is something that needs to be cleaned up. It's definitely on the coaching side of it and on the player side of it. It's both, but it starts with practice. This is one that I put in the I don't like category, but I'm not completely mad about it. But no passes for C.J. Rogers. Really would have loved to see him get a pass. I've been waiting to see him get a pass since he transferred from Baylor last year. Saw him pass the ball a lot in the spring, and I was like, it's got a pretty good arm. I understand why he's number 3 behind Finley and Hornsby. Those are 2 pretty terrific quarterbacks. But I think he has the talent to be an FBS starter as well. Even going all the way down to PJ Hatter. It's got a really good quarterback room. Going to be fascinating to keep my eyes on that in the offseason, see what happens there. No Calvin Hill. I mentioned a lot of running backs. We didn't see Calvin Hill. Wasn't injured. I'm looking up all the running backs that ran the ball. I mentioned Demarius Good, Ishmael Mahdi, Denario Davenport, Jamel Jeter. No Calvin Hill. And this really stood out to me because towards the end of the game, media, we sit in the press box, but at Bobcat Stadium, 5 minutes before the game, they hold the elevators and let the media get down to the field so that we can be right there for the press conference and everything. It also adds for a really cool game day experience where you get to see the final minutes of the game from the field. It's pretty cool. Not every stadium does that. I always appreciate that from Bobcat Stadium. And as I was walking by the bench of the Bobcats, I saw Calvin Hill sitting there in his pads. And then it registered. I was like, I haven't seen him carry the ball all night. Usually he's the first running back out there. I guess so much happened. They scored so fast on that first drive. It's hard to register everything, at least in the moment. So then I was like, oh, now Calvin Hill. And then you look at the the participation after the game. See, Sam Latham didn't get in there despite being dressed similar to Calvin Hill. So maybe there's some small lingering injury. And that's why they decided not to run him. Because, I mean, they even were putting in Demarius Good out there. So that's my assumption for now. I don't know anything for certain. But he was there. I did see Calvin Hill there sitting on the bench in pads, wasn't in street clothes. Because that's something I do before the game is I look for, okay, who's in street clothes? Who's not dressed for this game? Bo Corrales was one after he practiced on Tuesday. Hamstrings are very, very tricky, especially trying to recover them in the season because you need time with them in order to just keep creeping back up. And I'm pretty sure that's the case with him. I haven't talked to him, so I don't know that specifically, but I have heard it's the hamstring. So, Jordan Revels, same deal. He wasn't dressed before the game. Emeka Bebo, I don't think I tweeted about Emeka Bebo, same deal, street clothes. His brother Hameto started at right tackle. I'll get one last thing, some non-stat impact guys from the game that I noticed that really stood out to me. Trenton Scott playing for Nash Jones at left tackle. He did a terrific job. I mentioned how he was thrown out there at the UTSA game after Nash went down. And it's when you're not planned for something, it went the way you'd expect. Went a lot better on this Saturday. Even asked Coach Kinney about him after the game. Ran into Trenton Scott's dad before the game as well. Always great to see him. Caleb Johnson as well at center is really watching him. I ran into his dad as well. I wrote down both their names. Shout out to both their dads. I was in the parent section for a while, as you can tell. But Caleb Johnson looked terrific, snapping the ball. I think he's a really good center. Second unit offensive line in general. I thought they came in and didn't skip much of a beat. I'd imagine the third unit offensive line went in as well in the fourth quarter. I didn't keep as much track on that one. Titus Lyons, I mentioned him. Saw some good blocks from Titus, some stuff that doesn't pop up in the box score. Joshua Eaton at corner. Man, okay. I can't believe I didn't talk about him after last game. It's all three games. He's someone that he draws my attention. He's not getting a ton of stats, not a ton of pass breakups or interceptions or tackles, but he takes on the other team's top receiver, and this time it was Rico Powers, the receiver for Jackson State. It was number 1 versus number 1. They both wear number 1. And Eaton was handling it. And Powers is a guy who's averaging like 26.3 yards a catch. And he held in there. Let's see what Rico Powers' stats were before I go too crazy commending this matchup. I don't see a catch for Rico Powers. I don't see one. Oh yeah, here we go. 2 catches, 19 yards. Yeah. 2 catches, 19 yards. Jinsey Riley, shout out Jinsey Riley, almost a Texas State Bobcat. That guy, he's number 81 for Jackson State. He tried to hop Chris Mills, and he was trying to get on SportsCenter, and Chris Mills didn't let him. That was a funny play. But Rico Powers, Josh Eaton, he really hung in there. I think he had like 1 pass breakup, no tackles the whole game, so it didn't really pop up in the box score. But last weekend against UTSA, he was taking on Joshua Cephas, pretty terrific receiver for UTSA. Didn't completely stop him, the same way he didn't completely stop Rico Powers, but he controlled them, controlled that game, controlled that battle. It's real feisty too, gets in guys' face, gets the team fired up. It's great energy on the sideline. Same with Torrey Spears, great energy on the sideline. A lot of great energy guys on this team. Terry Webb, I love the sack dance. That was amazing. Shout out Terry Webb. Then PJ Hatters, my other non-stat impact guys, just because that run, that was great. That was fun. It didn't pop up in the box score, but deserves to be commended. I commended it earlier. But yeah, keep an eye on Josh Eaton at that corner position. That is the one good thing. I mentioned the broadcast and how it is really wide. You do see way more of the field. I'd like it consolidated more on the ball. But as far as like a all 22 type viewing, it's not bad. It's pretty nice. All in all, 77-34. I guess it's another thing I should have put on the don't like list. 34 points. You don't love that, Don't love to let 34 points go. But backups are in the game, and not much you can do about that. I'm not going to spend too much time harping on that one. 3 games in, that proof of concept is there. This offense can do this. I said it in leading into fall camp before I completely knew what I was looking at with this team. 6-6 bowl game. So confident with that. Still. I think this team can win more than 6. I don't know what the ceiling is. I could see 8. There's going to be some tough competition. We've seen South Alabama. Georgia Southern's no joke. Louisiana's starting to figure it out a little bit too. Southern Miss is always salty. There's some good opponents. Coastal Carolina, even ULM's not going to be a complete walkover. Only one they got is Arkansas State. Wolves down. What are you going to do about it? I think they could get a few more. Right now, they're 33.3% of the way with 2 wins. Need to get 4 more. But I'm still very confident in that. I said in that when I was saying 6-6, I said 3-1 after non-conference would need that to get to 6-6. They've got Nevada this week. Nevada's hasn't won a game in a long time. But the last time they won a game was against Texas State last season to open the season. And then G.J. Kinney beat them at Incarnate Word. So that bodes a little well for the Bobcats. I'm going to look up. I don't think they have any odds for it because it is on Sunday. Oh, yeah, Texas State favored by 16 points against Nevada, hosting Nevada. Ending non-conference at a 3-1 record. That's the ideal situation. 4-0 is even more ideal. Gosh, they'd beat UTSA, and then UTSA loses to Army like they did. Way different crowd, that Army game. Military City. I forgot to look up how many they had, but I did catch the end of it on TV, and it was not as big as the Texas State one. Keep telling me it's not a rivalry though. Okay, see you next year, September 7th, San Marcos. But yeah, that'll do it. Terrific win. Nevada next week. Can't wait for it. Tuesday press conference with G.J. Kinney. Some other players they're going to bring out for us. I can't wait to talk about it. This was an exciting game. Oh, you know what? There was one other thing I put on the I didn't like list before I go and do my little exit speech. I'm not used to a team scoring so much, and I did not like how long that game took. That was really long. When I was told fast offense. So in my head, I'm like, fast game, right? And I'm going to get home pretty early. Not the case, because you don't think about it. Score a touchdown, clock stops. They use that time to take a timeout, a TV timeout. Got to set up for kickoff. Everything resets. And when you score 11 touchdowns, that's 11 resets like that. So didn't like that. Didn't expect that. Now I know what to expect. I'm ready for it. Now I need to get used to covering an explosive offense. I haven't had the opportunity before. So I'm learning a lot, learning on the fly, learning with all of you. And I'm loving every moment of it. 77 points. Unbelievable. 77 points. But it's such a far cry from these lame duck offenses over the last 2 coaching regimes, 77. All right, that'll do it for this pod. Thank you, sickos, for tuning in. Don't forget to check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/WinNowOrGetBent. You can, if you're watching the YouTube channel, YouTube Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. Check me out. I'm wearing a nice Win Now or Get Bent hat. You can find that on WNOGB.com. Been seeing a lot of y'all order those hats and show me the hats, the sicko shirts, the mugs. We really appreciate y'all. Y'all are helping us grow with the Patreon subscriptions and by buying merch on WNOGB.com. It really expands what we can do along with our sponsors. We're getting to the point where I might be able to grow the staff, maybe more than a 2-man operation. Who knows? Maybe maybe we can start going on the road for some of these road games. We did the first 2 games of the season. We haven't planned it for the rest of the season, but that's my goal eventually for this pod. Maybe by next year is that we are at all 12 games doing these recaps, these game recaps that the Wizard is currently editing right now. it's part of the why we're putting it out on Sunday this week. We both got some stuff going on early this week, so we're gonna put it out a little bit early. But also check the Win Now or Get Bent YouTube channel for that recap video. You will enjoy that. I know it. I know I will. It's a lot to edit, and we were only allowed to put, I think it's like 4 minutes. So we really got to consolidate it. I'm probably going to be reading that script really fast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, rate. I ran into my guy Logan. I mentioned that. And I saw his wife, and he was like, hey, I signed her up too. I made an account for her. So shout out to Logan. Be like Logan. Make an account for your wife. Drive your wife nuts by keeping it on all the time. I could tell that, that was, she's got a little Kef fatigue, no doubt. Some Win Now or Get Bent on all the time, but it's okay. Shout out to Logan. Keep playing it, buddy. Really appreciate you. It was awesome to run into you. Thank you to TGC. Thank you to Balcones Roofing and Remodeling. Thank you to Edward Jones San Marcos and Thaddeus Watkins, a.k.a. Texas State's president of recruiting out there. At least the alumni president of recruiting. That's what we got to call him. Thank you to the sickos. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for going to the game. A lot of y'all went to the game. It's very cool. If you have the opportunity and you can get to the game, get out there. Keep making that atmosphere as awesome as it can be. And one more quick shout out to austin.patchmaster.com. We'll be throwing them in the mix with our sponsors here officially pretty soon, but giving them a little mini plug before that. And of course, did I thank the Wizard? Thanks to the Wizard, Zachary Webb. I'm going to thank him a little bit extra because that game was insane. It was a really long game. He did not get a chance to take a break with all the touchdowns, and he loved every minute of it. I am very, very fortunate to have that guy on my team because he is my workhorse, man. And I don't mean to do that to him. I'm not trying to make him work all the time, but that guy, he's incredible. And I am very excited to see the recap video that he puts out and the stuff we're going to put out for the rest of the season. We're going to be adding a lot more content to that. Our YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. We'll be adding extra interviews and stuff like that. It's been way too long since I've done an interview or since I've had a guest on the pod. We've just been doing a lot of new things. So things have been kind of up in the air. Oh, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? We're figuring out our workflow, and we're getting it all down. But need to break up this echo chamber that is just me talking about the Bobcats. We need to hear from some other people, and we will. Thank you for tuning in once again. We'll see on Saturday, sickos. Come on out, San Marcos. I'll be there. If you're tailgating, hit me up. I'll come find you, even if you're just at the game. Tailgate was wild, too. I didn't even mention that. It was a crazy tailgate. All right, sickos. Win now or get bent.